Okay, we had started discussion on Unit 5. Unit 5, I told you, comprises of four mm, related components. First one is leverage decisions. Second one is mm, financial distress and bankruptcy. Third is about the role of government and securities market in IPO valuations. The last one, IPO valuations and EM1A. And the second one is agency cost of debt. And we had taken up the first component, leverage decisions. We noted the meaning of leverage, the meaning of leverage decisions, and types of leverage. And we noted that there are basically two types of leverages. One is operating leverage, where which refers to the ratio between fixed costs and variable costs in the operating costs of an organization, and how does it help improve the, the return, the profitability. And the second leverage is the financial leverage, which is nothing but the ratio between the debt and the equity, the amount of debt you are using in your financing mix. Uh, these are the basic types of leverages we noted. And there is a third type, which is a combined version of these two basic types, that is combined leverage. What is this combined leverage? The concept of leverage is used in break-even analysis and in development of capital structure of the business firm, especially with respect to operating leverage. It is used in break-even analysis. You know the difference between uh, fixed costs and the variable costs, and the nature of fixed cost and the nature of variable costs, and the issue of contribution, which you must have studied in marginal costing also, management accounting. And there we try to find out with the help of operating leverage, what is the break-even level of our operations. Break-even level, you know, the level of activity or level of production where there is neither profit nor loss, right? Where both are equal. And every additional unit of production you do is going to bring you profit. That is about this break-even level. The first objective of any manufacturer is to reach this break-even level of production in terms of volume or in terms of value. You are aware of this. So operating leverage is concerned with the break-even analysis, or is widely used or referred to in break-even analysis to find out the break-even level of production or activity. Whereas the financial leverage is used while constructing the capital structure of the firm, while constructing the deciding on the debt equity mix of an organization, depending upon the relating proportion of debt and equity in your total capital structure. What should be the percentage of debt? What should be the percentage of equity? Which ratio of debt and equity is beneficial to the organization from the point of view of improving the earnings per share and the consequent market value of the organization. So please remember, these two basic types of leverages have their own utility in certain specific decision-making processes. Operating leverage in break-even analysis and decision on the level of activity required to be conducted, whereas financial leverage is used in constructing the capital structure of the equity mix to arrive at a effective or optimal capital structure. Now, operating leverage influences the top half of the firm's income. What is this top half of the income? In the income statement, you know, the first half refers to the profitability of the organization. So operating leverage, or the role of fixed costs and variable costs in your income statement, the debit side decides the amount of profit you are going to do, or the profitability level your organization is going to earn. Whereas the financial leverage influences the bottom half. Bottom half means the second part of your profit and loss account, which we normally call profit and loss appropriation account, where we appropriate the profits for mainly as a dividend for the equity shareholders. So your financial leverage affects the dividend your payout you are going to do for your equity shareholders, which is nothing but the earning per share, which translates into earning per share. So the operating leverage affects the first half of your revenue account, that is profitability of the organization, whereas the second, the financial leverage affects the bottom half of your revenue account, that is profit and loss of corporation account, or dividend payout and consequent earnings per share of the organization or the shareholders. So combined or the total leverage, we call this total. Total leverage is the cumulative amount, the total aggregate amount of risk facing the firm, including all other business risks, and it is the total amount of leverage that shareholders can use to borrow on behalf of the company. This probably you have considered while working out the arbitrage, where instead of the company taking a debt as a personal and a personal leverage you take, and thereby you are going to improve your earnings per share or return. So that is a larger influence of combined the total leverage. It refers to the total risks taken by the equity shareholders. That equity shareholders are concerned with the amount of fixed costs or the ratio of fixed costs, because that determines the total profits available to the company, and the financial leverage or the degree of debt and equity, that determines the equity shareholders return. So totally the equity shareholders of the company are exposed to both these effects of both the operating leverage and the financial leverage, or in one word, the combined leverage. And this combined leverage is used by the shareholders in taking decisions to borrow on their behalf instead of the company borrowing. So it is a part of the arbitrage which you must have studied or worked out, or you are likely to work out in advanced financial management area. But having said, while operating leverage denotes return from fixed assets, that is what we know, fixed costs and all those things, and financial leverage denotes the returns from debt financing. What is the return to the equity shareholders? What is the improvement in the return for equity shareholders if you use more debt or higher proportion of debt? The combined leverage is the sum of the both. So it takes into account the returns from fixed assets as well as the return from the debt financing which the company or the organization is going to make. Now, when we talk about leverage decisions or decisions with respect to incurring more fixed costs compared to variable costs or vice versa, and more debt than equity or vice versa, are there any factors that affect these decisions being taken by the organization? Yes, there are several factors. Various researchers, various studies have identified 5 factors generally affect the leverage decision. These decisions with regard to incurring the fixed costs as part of operating leverage, decisions with regard to debt financing as part of financial leverage. These factors are profitability. What is the degree of profitability we want, or what is the degree of profitability, but the resultant profitability that comes from higher operating leverage or lower operating leverage, higher financial leverage or lower financial leverage, what is the resultant profitability? Because all organizations want to improve their profitability. So what should be the ideal? What should be the optimum operating leverage? What should be the optimum financial leverage people are concerned? So this profitability factor affects your decision with respect to your operating leverage decisions, your financial leverage. Firm size of the firm. A small firm might not be going for very high financial leverage. It might like to have a lower financial leverage. Similarly, a small firm might not be incurring huge fixed costs, huge plant and machinery, huge manpower, paying fixed salaries, right? So even the firm size determines the degree of operating leverage and financial leverage. Smaller the firm, smaller will be the, or lower will be the operating leverage and financial leverage. Bigger the firm, proportionately bigger or higher will be the operating leverage and financial leverage. And growth opportunities. If a firm has huge growth opportunities, it may have to make investment in fixed assets. Naturally, in that case, the financial leverage will be very high if you are going to exploit these growth opportunities. If you are going to make investment in these growth opportunities or projects, investment projects or investment options having huge growth potential. Right? On the other hand, if you don't have such growth opportunities, if you are not expecting any big investment projects, you might not go for a higher financial leverage. You might be able to, or you might decide to work at a lower level of financial leverage, that is lower degree of lower amount of debt comparative equity. Similarly, when you are having huge growth opportunities requiring huge investment in fixed assets, naturally your operating leverage will go up because you are going to incur huge fixed costs in terms of depreciation. Nothing else in terms of depreciation. So there also the fixed cost will go up, or to be more specific, operating leverage, the degree of fixed cost compared to variable cost will go up. So growth opportunities, availability of growth opportunities, and the organizations or the firm's intention to exploit these growth opportunities by making investment in fixed assets also determines a degree of the level of operating leverage as well as, or most specifically, financial growth. Then tangibility of assets, whether the assets are tangible or intangible. You know this. Intangible assets do not require huge fixed investment. For example, there is goodwill, patents, or trademarks. They don't require huge investment in fixed assets in terms of land, or buildings, or plant, or machinery, right? But if the assets you are going to acquire for you are using in your operations, or really tangible assets like plant and machinery, you will be using a lot of fixed assets or tangible assets. Naturally, your investment in fixed assets will be very high, resulting in high fixed costs, resulting in higher operating leverage. So the nature of assets you are applying in your firm, whether they are tangible assets, operating leverage will be very high. They are intangible assets, right? Intellectual properties, as you say, non-physical assets, non-tangible, intangible assets. Then the operating leverage will be correspondingly low. And the industry median leverage. Sometimes you may have to invest in fixed assets as per the industry norms. Whether you like it or not, you might have to invest in R&D, you might have to invest in quality control, you might have to invest in safety equipment, etc., etc. So what is the nature of your industry's leverage, average leverage, right? Mean leverage. You cannot lag behind. You need to be on par with other players in the industry. You may have to make investments, whether you require it or not, whether you require it fully or not, you may have to incur. So in that case also, the industry trends, industry practices, industry norms, industry average investment in fixed assets, you might have. For example, all the industries have a debt equity ratio or the financial leverage in the order of 70:30. You cannot hope to perform, you cannot hope to operate your firm with a lower financial leverage of say 30:70, 30:30. That might not be feasible, that might not be viable also. Then in that case, people might not be able to invest in your company, might not like to invest in your company also. So they might compare the company with your company financial leverage with the financial leverage of other players in the industry. So sometimes even the industry norms affect the financial leverage decisions your company, your firm is going to take. Now, the next thing with respect to leverage decision is that leverage is neither inherently good or bad. It's nothing like bad leverage or good. Basically, leverage is neither good or not bad. It is necessary. It is necessary, that's all. But what is the degree of necessity? Your circumstances, your situation, your firm's status will determine, the conditions in your firm will determine, not anything else. It is not for fancy that you are going to take it. It is not for fancy that you are incurring fixed costs. By the nature of your operations, the level of your operations, the conditions of your operations, you are going to make leverage decisions, like financial or operating. So there is nothing like good or bad. Probably what is relevant is what is the optimum, what is the ideal, what is the effective level of leverage. So a firm should always try to reach that level. It is not possible probably in one stroke. You might have to reach that level gradually, to increase or to reduce. And the important nature of leverage, as we have noted earlier, is its amplifying capability, enhancing capability. It helps you enhance something else. Leverage is not for the sake of leverage. Leverage is used, or debt is used, or fixed costs are used for the purpose of uh, improving the profitability, improving the earning per share for equity shareholders. So leverage amplifies good or bad effects of income generation or productivity assets. So nature, leverage is neither good or not bad. Its importance, its significance lies in its ability, its potential to enhance the income generation or profitability of the organization or the earnings available for equity shareholders. From that perspective, you have to make leverage decisions, not for the sake of debt, not for the sake of equity, not because it is cheaply available, not because everybody is using it. No, you will have to examine, you will have to study as financial managers, you have to study its effect, its likely effect, its likely impact on the profitability of the organization, its likely impact on the return ROE of your organization. If you find that additional doses of leverage, additional doses of fixed costs, additional doses of debt compared to variable costs and equity respectively is going are going to help you improve this profitability, improve this EPS, then you should definitely go for additional process. If not, don't go. There is no rule that you should have this degree of leverage. No, there is absolutely no rule. It all depends on the circumstances originating in your organization and your managerial. So, with respect to leverage decisions, we need to be aware of this last thing. Leverage decisions are made based on their likely impact on profitability of the organization and their return on equity. If these are likely to be affected favorably or positively, going for respective leverage. If they are going to be unfavorably or negatively affected, you are going to hold back, you are going to reduce, you are going to reverse, right? Not to take these decisions. As of now, 28 are there who have joined now, who has been the latest entry. Are you following these things? Who are all there?
Yes, sir.
Vikas has joined now. I find nobody else. No new names. Some people have totally abandoned the college and the course already. Like 30 students, and that is a very big number. Okay. Now let us go to the next part of this presentation. Now the second component of unit 5, that is agency cost of debt. The first component is leverage decisions, the nature, type, impact, right, of leverage decisions. Try to refer back to your course material. And you will be able, I will be able to, I think I am going to share these PPTs also once all these sessions are over. Now you can refer to the source material. Now the second component is agency cost of debt. Please go through the slide. What is agency cost of debt? Agency cost of debt is a problem arising from the conflict of interest created by, hello, separation of management from ownership, that is shareholders in a public owned company. You are aware of this. In a publicly held company or public limited company, there is a separation of ownership and the management. The shareholders who might spread all across all over the country, who number might be running into thousands and lakhs, do not take part in the day-to-day. Mute your audios. I am telling you, mute your audios and unmute the video. Mute your audios. Okay. So the shareholders, this number is quite large, who are very well dispersed and a wide geographical area, are not in a position to take part in the day-to-day running of the organization. So what they do in their annual general meeting or any other such this one, they elect the board of directors. Board of directors are the representatives of the shareholders to manage the day-to-day affairs of the organization. So there is a clear-cut separation between the owners, that is the shareholders, right? Shareholders are the owners of the organization or the company, but they do not manage the day-to-day affairs. The management of the day-to-day affairs of the organization is entrusted to a separate body, a separate set of people called managers or directors or any other designation. So see from the right side, there is a separation of management from the owners. Those who manage are not the owners. Those who are owners do not manage. That is the strange situation. We call this separation of ownership and management in an organization. So this management team has to act as agents of the owners. They have to act in the best interest of these owners. Right? Managers have been entrusted with the responsibility of managing the organization on behalf of the shareholders by the shareholders. So there is what is called a agency relationship between the management team of an organization, might be board of directors or the senior managers, and the owners, that is the shareholders. So please note this difference. And because of this separation of management and ownership, there are situations where there will be conflict of interest. What is this conflict of interest? This conflict of interest refers to situations where the owners or the ownership wants one thing, whereas the management does the other thing, the opposite. Managers, probably shareholders, want higher profits, whereas the management team might want to have more for itself, more salaries, more wages, more perquisites, more allowances for themselves. In that case, your operating cost will be very high, your profits will come down, which is against the interest of the shareholder. So sometimes the management works right in conflict with the shareholders' interest. It might not always work, even though theoretically they are the agents of the owners, the shareholders. They are required to work in the best interest of the owners, but sometimes these management members, these managers, directors may not work in the best interest of the owners. This is called the conflict of interest. Okay. The costs resulting from these conflicts are known as agency cost of debt. So there are certain costs, there are certain financial implications of this conflict of interest that takes place between the management and the ownership. And these costs are classified as agency cost. Cost of being an agent. Since I am not able to manage it directly, I am appointing somebody. That fellow makes all the things, all frauds, all misappropriation. That is the cost I am paying. In order to check him, I will have to put up an internal audit division. The salaries and wages and other establishment costs of internal audit division is the agency cost. If the managers were to always work devotedly, committedly in the best interest of me, the owner, I would not have put any internal audit or vigilance department, and I would not have incurred any cost there. But since I know that these agents, that is managers, are not working in my best interest, to keep a watch on their decisions, to keep a watch on their actions, to ensure that they don't indulge in any fraud or misappropriation, I have to put in an audit setup, incurring of relevant costs in terms of salaries, wages, and other establishment costs. This is a cost which is going to debit it to the revenue account, which is going to bring down my profit. I might have to incur 1%, 2% of the profits on this, on monitoring these managers, on checking these managers, to to ensure that they work properly, they work effectively. So this is the agency. Cost that will have to be incurred by the organization to manage, monitor, follow up these agents of the shareholders, who are the managers or the directors. So these costs are called agency costs. Now you know this. Any cost is going to be controlled. The shareholders definitely will be interested in controlling or avoiding if possible, but if not, at least minimizing or reducing the agency costs. What can be done to minimize these costs? We shall see this in the next class, minimizing agency costs. So try to understand the concept of agency cost and its impact. Okay, its role, especially with the separation of ownership and management. I'm going to stop sharing the slides now. Finally, there are 28 students today, far less than your average regular attendance. Okay, and with 1 minute, I have 2 minutes already. I have the time. I'm going to end the meeting here. Okay, let's see in the next class.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, yeah, take care.
Thank you, sir.
Keep attending all the classes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Please referring to this course material, otherwise you will not be able to understand by simply following these slides. If possible, if you make a note of these points also. Okay then, thank you all. Take care.